Good evening once more. My name is Alex Muturi, your host this evening, and I'm glad to be working with you through this session today. So, on this session of Genkit, it will be more or less like a recap of what we had yesterday, since we have guys who are taking Genkit on Monday, others on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So for the guys who are with us today, we are going to look into Genkit once again. And I believe you've done a bit of research, a bit of digging around, and you have a good idea of what Genkit is. And it's something very interesting in the era of where we are having so many things happening around the field of AI and a lot of stuff being powered by AI, from devices to business workflows, to even smartphones that when you take pictures, they can enhance. There's a lot that is happening and being powered by AI. And the perpetual fear of AI is going to replace you as a dev. That's a discussion for another day, but today we are generally going to be talking about Genkit. So as we begin, the fundamental question here for us today is to ask ourselves, what is Genkit? And as we go through the session, we'll see some understanding some fundamental concepts about Genkit and how easy we can be able to integrate or use Genkit in our applications, and also understand or see the premise that you can get started using Genkit in your applications with just a few lines of code. How true is that? Now, in a nutshell, we can say that Genkit can basically be defined as a framework in line with today's agenda. As I've already gone through, we look at the frame, what is Genkit, define, see some key building blocks that define what Genkit is, and we can start by answering the question, what is Genkit? It's an open source framework by Google for building AI solutions. And generally, from what we know about frameworks, basically frameworks will be like a blueprint. You can say like a standardized format that tells you this is how you do this, these are the best practices, and it puts them in a structure that allows you to be able to do things efficiently without having to worry that you need to build everything from the ground up. So they basically give you a good foundation to start layering your application on top of, so that you don't have to worry about other things, but you just do what you know best. So this is what Genkit basically does. And when we go deeper and see how it provides for us this framework or blueprint that we can be able to lay our applications on top of, we will see that Genkit in itself is an SDK. And Genkit itself as an SDK sits between the LLMs, that is Gemini, GPT, Cloudy, OpenAI, all these other LLMs or even SLMs that you would know of, or any other models that you have worked with. There are those that are supported by Genkit using what we will see later on as Genkit plugins. And then you have Genkit sitting in between your application and the LLMs. So as we said, Genkit is giving you a foundation that allows you to use AI without having to worry about the technicalities and all that is behind Gemini or Cloudy or OpenAI, and you continue doing your stuff and building your application. Or rather, as we are saying here, your code remains the same. It doesn't have to change. Your React code remains the same. Your JavaScript code remains the same. Your Python, your Go code is going to remain the same. And everything that you know, you're not going to have to go out of your context, or rather out of your place, in order to add AI or power your apps using AI. Now, so that brings us to the premise, or rather, the idea that with a few lines of code, you are able to power your apps with AI. Is this really true? So as we have said that the Genkit SDK sits in between your app and the LLM models. You don't need to know their APIs. You don't need to know how they work internally. All you need to know is how to add them into the Genkit SDK, send commands to the Genkit SDK from your applications, and voila, you're able to use AI within your application. Simply, just like we can see here, you just get in Genkit into your, you just create a small app with Genkit, and easily you can be able to generate text. You can be able to replace, like here we have a plugin that is using Google AI, and it is using the Gemini 2.5 Flash model. And you can use anything. You can use Imagen, OpenAI, Anthropic. You can use DeepSeek or Llama. With a few lines, you already have AI powering your applications. Now, as simple as it looks, how do we get this to work with our applications? We shall see that later. Now, as you do that, Genkit in itself, remember we said that it's a framework. It offers you so many tools, features that enable you to bring AI, to bring that power of AI into your applications. And we shall see different things that exist, or things that are available to you as a dev from Genkit itself. We shall get to understand things like flows. You're able to use prompts. And remember that at the core of your generative AI, we basically are giving it instructions using prompts so that it can be able to succeed and achieve the tasks that we have set it out to do. And then we shall see plugins. Plugins, these enable us to use other external LLMs, or we can use things from the Gemini model that you can integrate into our application. So the plugins will provide that connection to LLM models. And then we have tools. When you come to tools, we have things like tool calling, whereby we are able to ground our AI in specific contexts, so that we are able to have very specific answers from the data that we want. Yesterday in the session that Miner walked us through for Genkit, remember he spoke about, sorry, you are not there, sorry. So he spoke about hallucinations, and all of us have heard about hallucinations. And generative AI, by and general, it's a predictive engine. It predicts what comes next. And if you do not ground it, it can be very creative if it doesn't know. Unless you tell it to say, I do not know, it tends to be very creative. So tools will be very important when we are doing AI applications, and those applications need to be grounded to a very specific context. Retrieval augmented generation, all of us have heard about RAG, whereby we're able to get data. Like, for example, if you're building an application that tells people, or rather gives people places that they can get Airbnbs from. Now, you would have this data sitting in a database, and then you can be able to retrieve it and give people recommendations. When you go to this place, you can get this Airbnb. These are the reviews by the people. This is blah, blah, blah. So you can be able to retrieve data and have your LLM answer questions based on that data. And then you shall see another feature of Genkit Developer UI, which helps with observability and being able to see what is happening when you're running your flows. You can be able to see how much or how many tokens your app is using. So you can be able to have some data, some feedback on how your code is executing when inside your Genkit app. Now, among the Genkit features, you will find the developer tools. This will be a UI, and as we are working, or rather as you're working with Genkit, this is something that you will be using in order to quicken your speed, or quicken or take less time when developing. You'll be able to have a command line for running your Genkit commands, and a web app that is the developer UI. You can be able to see different things. You can be able to see your flows as you execute them. You can see how the execution of the flow occurred until you got an answer or a response back from the prompt. So you will have access to these developer tools that are inbuilt into the Genkit SDK itself to aid you in your development process or flow. Now, we spoke about Genkit allowing you to add external models, or allowing you to access a variety of models that help you to achieve what you want to achieve using the AI part of your application. And the Genkit capabilities that you will be able to access. Remember, we said Genkit is an SDK that is allowing you to do so many other things. So these capabilities are designed to be brought in by plugins. These plugins will give you access to OpenAI, Ollama, Cloudy, the Gemini models themselves. And when you're dealing with TypeScript, you basically do simple imports as we do here. We are importing from the core Genkit package, and then from it you can be able to get the model that you are interested in, that is Gemini 2.0 Flash. And then here we have the Genkit instance itself that is being imported from Genkit. And simply you just create an instance of Genkit, passing in which plugin you would like to use. If here we are using Google AI, we could be using OpenAI as the plugin. We could be using DeepSeek as the plugin. And then inside, we also pass a model from the plugin that we are using for Google AI. Which model are we interested in? We are interested in using Gemini 2.2. If it was OpenAI, which model are we interested in using? GPT-4 or something. So once you have this instance, you are ready to go. You are ready to do stuff with the Genkit instance. You can generate, you can start creating charts, and you start experiencing on having the power of AI inside your applications. As easy as that, with a few lines of code. Now, as we have said again, that the plugins will give you access to models, whether Gemini or external, and then the SDK sits in between, negotiates between the LLM models and your application, and you still continue doing what you're doing, which basically means that currently, if you have an application, your application can actually start interacting with AI immediately if you integrate Genkit into that React application. Or if you have a Node.js application, you can be able to add Genkit into it, and your application starts interacting with AI. You can be able to, like, for example, the guys who are in e-commerce, and your Node.js application can be able to fetch data from the database, and then using AI, you can be able to tell it to give you insights on what products are purchased by customers. You can be able to start doing some quick analysis for trends, for recommendations straight out of the box, and your application doesn't have to change. It only needs to know how to speak with the Genkit SDK. The Genkit SDK takes care of speaking with the LLM models, and you get your analytics, your trends, your recommendations. You get everything going based on what you want. You could even be using Imagen for generating images, all manner of things with the LLMs based on what you want to achieve. Now, model providers. So now, for example, here we are seeing that from Genkit itself, the core package, and then we have here we have the Google AI package as well that we are able to provide some models from. So being able to create an instance of Genkit is as easy as this. It's not complicated. With that, you're able to provide a model that you're going to work with, and you will send your commands or your prompts to that AI model. This is an example of how you could be using OpenAI. And then, so here you still have the core Genkit SDK, and then you have the OpenAI plugin loaded. And then once you have the OpenAI plugin, next you would basically provide what model do you want to use from OpenAI. Is it GPT-4, whichever model that is available via the OpenAI plugin. And this way you begin using your OpenAI GPT models. The same goes for other providers, DeepSeek, Grok. You can be able to use them basically like this. Now, we have seen how you can be able to bring in different external LLMs into your application using Genkit. Let's, for example, here look at how we can use Genkit and Gemini. Now, remember, the first step that you'll always have to do is you have to initialize Genkit. And this is same as you do for the guys who are doing OOP. Basically, we are just creating an instance. That is what we are doing. You're just initializing an instance of Genkit, and then you are passing the plugin, and then we are passing the model that we are interested in, or the model that we want to use. Very simple. And then once we have that done, now we can start running commands. And here we have a function that we are going to run, and then you tell it to, like, for example, help me to generate a meal plan for weight loss for 7 days. It will go ahead based on the data that it has. It will be able to generate for you a response and give you back. Just simply like that with those two steps. If you initialize Genkit, and then you do the function, or rather you create a function, and then you call the instance.generate. Immediately once the response is ready, you will see it. As simple as that, and you already are doing generative AI. You're generating text. This prompt could be this question, or this input could be anything. You could be asking for, tell me about Nairobi City. If it has knowledge and context on Nairobi City, to generate something about that. Tell me something about Kariokor. Tell me something about Kisumu. Tell me something about Nakuru. Tell me something about Harambee Stars or Safaricom. If it has that info, it can be able to generate some text for you, simply like that, as easy as that. Now, we spoke about flows. Maina, you can be taking questions for me, kindly. Thank you.
I say no problem. Let's wait for the session to be over, and then we can answer the question. But for those who have questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we're going to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you. So for Genkit, besides just writing like what we have seen in the previous slide, we could do something like this. But in order to take advantage and as well be able to use the power behind Genkit, one of the things that we shall have access to, or one of the features that is in Genkit, is flows. And what are flows? We can say flows in a nutshell are functions, but these are functions with other capabilities above the normal functions that we write in any application. And one of the things about flows in Genkit, or a flow in Genkit, is that it's a traceable function that orchestrates your AI workflow. For example, a flow could be get me the weather in Nairobi City. You define that flow, how it happens from the beginning to the end, so that when you define that flow, or rather when you define those steps, they are orchestrated inside a flow. And these flows are composable. You can create multiple flows, and then you take all those flows that you have created and put them inside one flow, and that one flow can be able to execute other flows inside of it step by step. For example, if probably you're in design or you're in fashion, you can have, for example, you want to design a suit, men's suit. No hard feelings to the ladies. You can define that flow by saying that you will start by sourcing for the material, and then once you source for the material, you will define the cuts that are supposed to be made in the material, and then you have another flow which defines how you stitch the materials together. And then you have another flow which defines how do you add buttons to the let's say for the coat, and then how do you add a zip to the trousers. And then you'll have another flow which defines how do you add labeling to the suit. So all these single flows, you can be able to compose them into one single flow. So flows will be a very important aspect of you being able to utilize and use Genkit if you understand how to take them, use them, compose them, because they will be taking on your business logic. And these flows are what, remember, you can be able to deploy as an API endpoint so that your applications are able to interact with your AI. So flows will be an important aspect that one needs to understand so that you can be able to use Genkit and be able to enjoy the power behind the SDK. Now, as we've mentioned, the flows will be able to orchestrate your AI workflows, and they perform steps. And these steps can be, as in the example that we've given of a designer who is creating a men's suit, they can begin by sourcing the material, defining the cuts, and then stitching the material. All these are steps that can be defined by workflows. Maybe there is a certain LLM which is good at sourcing materials. It can it has access to data around Nairobi or whichever city you are in. It knows it can be able to get data about different providers of cloth materials, their contacts and everything, gives you that. And then you have another LLM which is able to order those materials. It gets those materials. There is another LLM which is good at creating the design, broken down step by step. You orchestrate your flows, and then you have things for sensitive APIs. You can be able to add authentication, authorization. You're able to add RAG. So within one flow, you can have multiple flows. So like, for example, in the example we said, you are able to source, you have an LLM which can tell you who provides what kind of material in this town. This is their contact. This is the building and the street where you can find them. So all of that is data that you're able to get from the database. So at that point, you will be using RAG. So with the flows, you're able to take many flows and orchestrate them and have them run from the beginning to the end for you to accomplish your task. Now, another feature or another thing that you will find with flows is that they offer you structure and type safety. You're able to define your inputs and inputs using Z schemas, that is using Zod. For guys who've dealt a lot with TypeScript, you know about this, how you're able to add type safety into your functions, or rather into your returns or the responses that you get from a function. So the flows come built in with the ability to allow you to have structure and type safety, and specifically using the Zod schema. So this is something that the Zod schema is a utility that's being used a lot in TypeScript. So you will get to enjoy it as well with Genkit to help you streamline, especially for data that is unstructured. You can be able to take data that is unstructured and return a structured output. Like, for example, if you take a picture, like if you go to the market and you take a picture of a kiosk by a Mama Mboga, from that picture, there are many items that are there. There is a tomato, there are pumpkins, there are kales, so many other items, carrots, onions. All of that is data that is not specifically defined in any structure. And then your LLM that is able to process this image can take that image and you can tell it, I would want whatever you ingest from this image, you can put it into this structure. It can say vegetables will go here, fruits will go here, herbs will go here. So you're able to define the output schema or the shape of how the output will look like. So this is something that you get out of the box with Genkit flows. Genkit flows will offer you now, as you're building up your applications, they will give you the advantage of being deployable as HTTP endpoints. For example, if we talk about an application like, let's go back again to a Mama Mboga kiosk. And let's say for the guys who are in Nairobi, the most common market is Marikiti. Maybe we have some guys who go to Marikiti in the morning. They get the prices of different items, the cabbages, carrots, and or when you go to the market or when you want to buy stuff, you can just give your LLM a picture of what is in your fridge. You can take a picture of what is in your fridge or what is in your store inside your house and tell it, I would like to restock these items. Take a picture, and then your AI app can be able to contact the HTTP endpoint, whereby, remember, on the other end, you have guys who went to the market in the morning and picked the prices of this lady selling carrots at 1 kg for 50 shillings, another lady is selling at 53 shillings, another lady is selling at 55. And then I just go back to my store in there. Maybe I have a small restaurant. I can go to my store, take a picture and say, I want to restock this, I want to restock this, I want to restock this. And my app will be able to hit your Genkit API endpoints, and then it will give me the price. This lady is selling carrots at 55, this one at 53, this one at 55. And I can be able to decide based on the quality of the product that they have, that I can see maybe even in the pictures, I can decide I want to purchase from this person. So my app is the restaurant user. I'm sitting in a restaurant. I'm able to hit your AI endpoints, that your application endpoints that are powered by AI, and AI is helping me to select from whom do I buy, from whom do we have good quality products. So that is an example of how your Genkit flows can end up being HTTP endpoints that can be used by your applications, mobile applications, web apps, all manner of applications. Now, we talked about the developer UI that allows you to be able to see or monitor your flows as they are getting executed, what is happening, and all of this, you're able to do it locally. You can be able to see where you have some bottlenecks, where it's taking long. So you can be able to watch and see your flows executing. This makes it easy to build applications that are performant. So one of the advantages will be that you're able to build performant applications. You can see things as they happen, the flows. Like, for example, if you have multiple flows that have been composed into one flow, you can see how the handover goes, the input, the output, how long it took. All of that info is available to you from the developer UI. The other thing that, for example, we can look at a video here. So now, if we look at this, this is for the GitHub Griller. This was one of the applications that we did a demo for those who came to the different kickoffs that we are having in different towns. So this is part of what you can see. You can see your flows executing. You can see different stats for your flows as they execute. This is from the Firebase Studio. Let me go back to that screen. So this is from the Firebase Studio. So sorry about that. So from the video, you can see that we have different stats that you're able to get from the Firebase Studio. Let me replay it once again. And you can be able to see, for example, here, let me just go back a little too fast. Yes. So you can be able to see the requests, you can be able to see the success rate, you can be able to see the latency. So all of this observability as well is available in the Firebase Studio. This helps for you to be able to tell, like, for example, at some point, the GitHub Griller was unable to respond to requests. You can be able to see how many requests were answered, how long it took to answer a request, how many requests you had, and then below these 3 blocks that you can see here below, you can be able to see the flows that were being executed. So this is available locally. You're able to have the developer UI, but on Firebase Studio, you also have this UI as well, which is an observability UI that shows you the different things that are happening when your application is running. Now, we said that your Genkit flows are deployable as API endpoints, and when you do it on Firebase, you can have them as Firebase functions. If you have built your application using Express, you can deploy this as a Node.js application, and you can have your endpoints available via an Express.js app. You can deploy this on Cloud Run if you want to, and you can also be able to deploy onto your own server if you want to. So basically, it's where you're comfortable with, or the infrastructure, or where you know you're able to manage these endpoints. And once you deploy them, they are available online. Your apps can hit them as any other API that you avail to your applications, whichever way you decide. If you decide, probably you can hide them behind your different platforms or stacks, whatever you decide, or however you decide to provide access to these API endpoints. The good thing, or rather the thing, will be that now your applications, via however way you negotiate access to API endpoints, they will sit there, they will be available, and your applications can be able to call them and get data and get powered by AI. Now, to define a flow, how do you define a flow? A flow will have a very simple structure. It has a name, and then you open it to the define flow keyword, which expects, or rather accepts. We have the first object here, which is defining the things that you need for you to structure your flow. That is the name of the flow. And if you look here, we have the same name here going for the same name here. And then we have an input schema. Remember, we said we have the advantage of being able to describe both input and output schemas. So we can define what are we going to expect. We expect a simple string, and the output will be an object, which will be a post. Like, for example, you have your AI that is generating for you different, or rather generating for you blog posts for a certain topic. So you can pass in the topic, this topic, or this description could be from an input on the UI, which gets passed down to this flow. And then what you expect is that it will create a post and it will tell you the character count inside the post. Now, once you tell it those nitty-gritties of how the flow is defined, and then you have a function here which takes in the topic and the code to execute for you to achieve this. Remember, you could, in this code to execute, you could have your generate, or you could even be restricting the topic, or rather the content that is generated, to be restricted to a specific data set, or grounded to a certain data set. So whatever happens here in the code to execute will be based on what you want the grounding, like for example, where you want the topic, or rather the post text, to be grounded on. So now, if we look at the same, now here we see the implementation. Here we are just using generative capacity, or the capabilities, the generative capabilities of AI here. And remember, this Genkit instance here could be using maybe ChatGPT or Gemini 2.0 Flash. It could be using any of those models that we want to use. For code, you could be using something different. And then here, for example, in this instance here, we want to generate some text. So we pass to it a prompt, generate a short engaging social media post about this topic, keep it under 200 characters. We also have temperature. We also have temperature, and temperature is going to give our AI, or our model, the ground, the guardrails as to how creative it can be, or to how deterministic or specific it can be. So you use temperature to control the creativity of the AI, and then once we get the response, we're able to return the response. So as simple as that. You define how your flow is going to be set up, and then you have the function that is going to be executed for you to achieve the task that is in hand. And the task in hand here is for us to generate some just text, as simple as that. And that is a flow. That is how you define a flow. Now, for example, if you have this, if you had multiple flows, you could have this. To generate the post, you would have another flow that posts this post to LinkedIn, another one to post to X, another one to post to Discord, another one to post to another platform. And then you could have another flow that creates an image, a header image for this post. You could have many other flows that you could piece together, and then you put them into one flow that composes all these other flows, and it can run all of those flows, starting by generating the post, creating an image. Once you have an image, then you can probably have even another flow which is going to check this post that you have generated for authenticity, maybe, so authenticity or being factual, so that it is not hallucinations. If it passes, you can generate a header image, and then good to go. It can send you a notification on email and tell you your post is ready. It can create a newsletter, send it to people. Another flow to send to LinkedIn, to WhatsApp, to X. You could have multiple flows following after that. Now, the other aspect of building with Genkit is being able to use prompts or user inputs. Most of us are used to prompts, and there are structures that you use to define prompts. And when we come to prompts and user inputs, Genkit will allow you to define your prompts. You can declare them declaratively using a .prompt file, or you can programmatically add them in your code, which means they will be tightly coupled in your code. It means they will exist directly in your code. So it's upon you to decide what you want to do. Unless the prompt doesn't change, or for whatever reason you decide it should be in the logic as per your architecture, that's your decision. So you pass them You can pass a prompt using the dot prompt file, which you import into your files based on how you also again architecture your app. You could decide I want flows in this file, I want the functions, or rather I want this to contain the callers or those people who are going to call these flows. This is the place where I'm going to process my responses from the LLM. Based on how you decide, you can structure your application and import the prompts. A simple prompt that you can be able to pass or import into your workflows, or rather into your flows. This is a simple one, for example, generating a recipe for a dish. For those guys who've dealt with YAML files, this appears to be very similar with the indentation, and I think also for Python guys, the indentation looks very familiar. So this is how you will define a prompt inside a dot prompt file. Now, once we've defined our prompt, or rather, this is another example of how, for example, we can be defining a prompt, and we build on that example of creating a recipe. Again, we can define a prompt here, and then recipe generator, we give the name. The name is a recipe generator. Then we have the model that we want to use, and then again, we specify the input output schemas, and then the message, and we instruct the AI what we want it to do, the role, we give it the content, and we are able to pass on to it what we want to do in the prompt. Like, for example, here we are saying generate a simple recipe for a dish that features this main ingredient, which will come in as an input, and the AI can generate for you a recipe. Now, once you define your prompts in a dot prompt file, how do you use it? Remember, in the other examples we've just seen simple.generate. We pass a string input and we tell it what to do. Now here our prompt exists in a dot prompt file. You can import it in your Genkit file and then simply run it. And here we have the generate function, which is receiving the prompt, and we have the input. This part of the input is what will be passed on to the prompt. And you don't need to worry about this. Genkit knows how to do all of this by itself. You just need to structure your stuff following the right structure and the right naming references, and Genkit will take care of the rest. You don't need to worry about how it will know where to pass this to your prompt. It will know how to pass it to your prompt, process it, and give you the output. So once that is done, now here you know how to use prompts and user inputs into your Genkit AI-powered applications. So now we ask, what's next? In the next sessions that we are going to do, at least now you have the Genkit fundamentals, you can be able to start, or rather you can be able to run your own simple Genkit applications with a few lines of code. It's not complicated. With just a few lines of code, you can be able to create, like, for example, run something that does some creates for you some generative text in different scenarios. You can give different prompts. You can prepare prompts that exist in a different file. You can be able to pass multiple prompts. You can be able to select a prompt based on a user input if you have multiple prompts. So for now, you have an idea of how to instantiate Genkit and give Genkit a command to generate for you some text. For the following sessions that you are going to have, or the sessions that you are going to have next week, this will be more hands-on. We are going to see how we can create chat sessions that you can be able to have interactive chats with a Gen AI, and how you can be able to specify or put guardrails into context or pass context into your generative AI. We shall look at the Genkit developer tools or the Genkit development UI. What are the features and how you can take advantage of them? We shall look at retrieval augmented generation, how we can be able to enhance or ground our AI generation based on specific context. Because remember here, we said LLMs are just predictive engines. At best, they will answer you with what they have been generally trained on. The same way that ChatGPT is able to answer you. If you ask it about something, right now you can ask it, tell me about Nairobi. It will tell you what it knows generally about Nairobi. But if you ask it to tell you something like to do with, tell me about Kamukunji and Sabasaba, it may not likely know about Kamukunji and how Kamukunji ties to Sabasaba. So you would have to give it very specific information, maybe historical information, starting with guys like Matiba and all down all the way to present generation, so that it can have good context about Sabasaba and Kamukunji. The other thing is function and tool calling, whereby you're able to also access things like databases and all to give your AI more data. So we'll see how tool calling can be employed as well using Genkit. And with that, remember, all these things are enabling your application to have access to AI, generative AI, without changing your application. This is just an add-on layer that you add, or a utility that your application can be able to communicate with, or API endpoints that your apps can be able to call, and you have access to AI and power your applications with AI. Code Labs. These Code Labs, these specific slides will be shared so that you can be able to access these Code Labs, and these Code Labs that we have here currently, they are also available on our Discord server. Those who are already on Discord, if anyone hasn't joined Discord yet, we shall share the link again on the chat for you to be able to join the Discord server, so that you can be able to have access to more resources, you can be able to ask questions, and you can be able to get access to more Code Labs. This evening, we shall have some more Code Labs shared so that you can continue going into what you can do with Genkit. And I would encourage you to go ahead, play with Genkit, try it out, create sample applications, get yourself used to how Genkit works, the features it has, so that next week when we start hitting, when we hit the ground running and we start building applications, Code Labs for next week are going to have assignments that you are going to build certain applications or certain assignments that help you to understand how Genkit works. So get your hands, get your feet wet, try out Genkit, see what you can do with it, get familiar with it. Go ahead and attempt to complete these Code Labs so that you can gain as much as you can. Remember, this is self-paced, so you have to do it yourself. And you will also have to do it as a community, learn together as a community. So ask questions if you have ideas. If you come across something interesting, don't hesitate. Share it with the rest of us so that we can be able to learn more insights from what you're gaining as you go through Genkit. Questions, comments, anything you can add or you to do with AI or so. Minor, you're welcome to add something that you can add to what you've gone through today.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the amazing session today. And I don't have anything specific to add. I think if I didn't answer your question in the chat section, feel free to raise your hand and we are going to give you the floor in order to answer those questions. And you can still ask those questions in the chat if you have anything else. And we also have a Discord server where you can ask questions later as you do your code labs.
So from our chats here, I can see Anissa.
Yeah, I had answered most of those questions. So the last one is by Caleb.
Yes, Caleb.
Is Genkit limited to a specific language? At the moment, yes, two languages, Go and TypeScript. We have a Python language support that's coming in the near future. But at the moment, you can still use Python, but it's very early on, so it's probably going to be buggy. I would not recommend it. So at the moment, Genkit is more geared towards TypeScript and Go developers, but with time, you're going to get more languages support. I know Java language support is in the pipeline, so please, there's that. And then I have no idea what's going to be supported next, but more languages are going to be supported.
All right. So I see there is also a question there that was asked by Peter Olo about the language here. The slides, our slides here are using TypeScript. So you can also, when you go to the Genkit docs, they also have samples that are using Python. So you can be able to try it out as well. So anyone else with a question should ask something general as well, to do with AI. Don't feel shy, or a comment or something. Yes, Peter, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Alex, I was in the onboarding, so I can put the face to the presenter. This is really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just maybe something. I've been really working on TensorFlow, and I don't know whether because TensorFlow is also from Google, and maybe you can clarify on the two LLMs, the main difference on the two. Sorry if this is out of the topic, but I just wanted to understand. Thank you.
All right, Maina, you can take that.
Yeah. So Google is confusing sometimes, so that's as simple as that, unfortunately. So with with TensorFlow, it's more about training models. I think we have TensorFlow, we have JAX and similar models that are used to basically train models so that you can build your own models. And then Genkit is on the other side of things about a framework for building LLMs on top of building AI solutions on top of LLMs, which the reason I said Google is a little bit confusing is because we now have Genkit on one side, and on the other side we have ADK, which are basically the same kind of framework-ish that do the same thing. But at this point in time, at least there's a clear-cut division whereby we have TypeScript, Go people use use Genkit, Python, Java use ADK, but then there's this overlap here whereby now ADK has support for Go and Genkit has support for Go. But I think the Genkit the Go SDK for ADK is still very early on. So it's a little bit confusing, but I think it's more about like which language you're comfortable with, and you should try both tools and see which works for you. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Weekly, for that. Alex mentioned something about SLMs. Maybe a clarification on this, and how does this differ with LLMs?
Yeah. So LLMs or large language models are what we have come or gotten used to. So these are the likes of Gemini, ChatGPT, and so on. These are basically know it all. I think it's the right word. Models which are very huge, and require a lot of like computation resources to do that. But SLMs or small language models are models that are very small, focused to do a very specific things. So a good example of this is Gemma. So with Gemma, we have Gemma 1B, which is geared to run on very low end devices like mobile phones. And then we have Gemma 4B, which is targeted on laptops. So these are small language models that they are good at what they do, but they don't have like the general knowledge that these other LLMs that come with. So you can take something like Gemma or even your own foundation model LLM and then train it to do a very specific thing instead of being a general purpose LLM.
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you. It's really amazing. Thank you so much.
I can see there is a question here by Crispin Oigara. How does Genkit integrate with tools like LangChain and LLMs to help developers prototype AI solutions faster?
So Genkit and LangChains are sort of like similar in what they do. They are both frameworks for building AI solutions. So in fact, like you could say in the world that LangChain and Genkit is an alternative to LangChain. And now both of them integrate into have like plugins so that you can integrate into OpenAI, Anthropic, Google models. So that with the help of plugins, I think we had a slide in there that showed you how to do with Gemini, but in the docs for Genkit, you'll be able to see how you can do this with various models from OpenAI, Anthropic, or everything else, including your own LLM if you wanted. So for instance, if you took Gemma and trained it yourself and you wanted to now use Genkit to basically integrate with that, you can use something like Orama to integrate with that and be able to now interact with your own model. I hope that answers your question, Crispin.
There's also Phil who was asking, are there any free models that you can connect with Genkit?
Free to some extent is what I'll say. So Genkit, I think Gemini has like a very generous free tier, especially like 1.5 and 2.0. Even 2.5 Flash, I think the only one, Flash and Nano, those are tend to have like very generous free tier. I think the ones that they limit usage is the pro versions of the variations of the Gemini their models. I'm not sure about the rest, but I think also GPT also offers like a good free tier, if I'm not mistaken. But I would need to do some research on that one.
Okay, there is also a question here by Bethwell about setup. I think Bethwell, there is a code lab for setups. You should be on the Discord server so that everyone will have a good idea of what needs to be set up before you start using the. You can be able to use Genkit, and there will be also other setups or other code labs that assist you in setting up your credits. So all of that will be provided via code labs. And that is the reason why we are insisting, please keep your eyes peeled on our Discord server so that you can be able to see or have access to all these resources that enable you to be set up and be in a position to be able to complete your code lab. So that it's set up, credits, how to do 1, 2, 3, all of this will be shared on Discord. Maurice Usoro here, you can see, can you shed some light about JAX in custom model development?
Yeah, so JAX is a plugin for Python, which helps you so that you're able to basically do your own custom model or like train. It's JAX. I think that's the right spelling. You had it right in the right place in the first place. JAX, not JAX. But basically, it's, so I think I can if you want to learn more about this, you can hit me up on Discord and I'll send you some materials. But to put it lightly, this is about like when you're training model, you need to be able to do things like sharding of the data. You need to be able to prepare data, pass in the data you want to train, and then also the model you want to, let's say, train. A good example of this is Gemma. I think OpenAI. Oh, I keep confusing OpenAPI and OpenAI. Okay, OpenAI. Developers. OpenAI has an open model. I don't remember its name, but that you can now take and train yourself. And once you provide all that information, then JAX is able to help you do this very seamlessly. So just pass in data within different formats, and then it's able to basically, like, you can learn the training and get a model that is trained to do a very specific thing.
All right, thank you. I see some more questions are still streaming in.
So should you train the LLMs used by Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. to better accommodate your needs? So we don't. So the thing about Gemini, GPT, and all those models that we have access to is we call them closed models. In terms of that, you don't have. You can't modify the foundation, their foundation models for them. So you access them through an API. You access them through an API to do that. In order to get that to do your thing, this is where techniques such as function calling and RAG comes in, whereby you cloud it on based on your organization data and does that. And this comes with a few trade-offs like privacy, cost, and everything in between. And this is whereby training your custom model can come in, whereby you can take Gemma, train it and learn it within your structure in order to make sure that everything that you pass into the model doesn't leak to the external world, because you have no idea. Like privacy is an actual concern, and then cost to keep everything down, because now you can, if you are not doing something complicated, you can take something like Gemini 4B, which can run on a laptop and run that on a server, and that means that it's more cost effective for you. The only problem is, like, to train that, you require like to be technically competent. So if you're doing a product initially, you might like need to evaluate those what are they called, the trade-offs of doing one over the other one, because not everyone will be able to do the actual training, or maybe you don't even need to. So it all depends with like your end goals, and you need to evaluate that from that perspective.
There's also a question there by Anissa about WhatsApp. I would encourage everyone, so that you have a centralized place for communication. We try as much as possible to be on Discord. This will allow us to have centralized communication and a place where anyone who joins us in the journey afterwards can be able to see past resources. On WhatsApp, it will not be easy to go to past messages. There is another one here by Christine Yakio. What cloud platforms and services best work with Genkit?
In a Node.js environment, okay, for Node specific, for TypeScript version, and Go in an environment where Go runs for Genkit Go version. So this means anything from Firebase functions to your own server, to Google Cloud, to Azure, to AWS, anywhere you want to run it, as long as you can run Node.js, you should be able to run Genkit. As long as you can run the Go Go doesn't even have a runtime environment. As long as you can execute Go into that environment, then Go, then that is just going to work. So we are not limited to just GCP technologies. You can run this anywhere you want, including locally in your own machine.
Yeah, to add on to that, if you have even access to shared hosting, and the person who is hosting for you can add the ability to, like the guys who are doing cPanel is mostly on Windows. They can add for you the Node.js support. You should be able to run your Node.js applications wherever you are, whether it's DigitalOcean or some other kind of VPS. As long as you're able to run your Node.js applications, you should be able to run Genkit there. There is also another question here by Newton Ochieng. I'm new to TypeScript, but familiar with JS. I think you're good if you're good with JS. Maina, how do we put it? How do we put this simply about TypeScript and JS? That relationship.
Basically, TypeScript is a type system for JavaScript. So if you strip out all the types from TypeScript, then what remains is JavaScript. So at the heart of it, it's JavaScript. So as long as you're familiar with JavaScript, running TypeScript should be trivial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And given that, maybe I'm assuming Newton should be familiar with things like OOP, so picking up TypeScript will be very easy. And at the end of the day, TypeScript is also going to compile down to JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
And then we have another question here by Phil. Are there any models it doesn't connect to, or for example, does it work with GitHub models?
I would like to. Okay, I'm not sure because GitHub has. Okay, I'm not sure which models GitHub has, but ideally, if there is some model Genkit doesn't support, you can extend that with what is it called, a plugin. So you build a plugin in terms of like tapping around the APIs for the model in order to use it. But as long as you can execute this through something like Orama, which can be used to basically like run almost any model in the world, then it should work. Or something like another option is OpenAI router. Is that what it's called? I think it's OpenAI router, which is another good option for accessing way more models with different pricing plan.
And if you don't find one that is supported, hey, you can build something and share with the community. Flex your muscles a bit. Another question here we have we've answered Newton Ocheng and Phil. We have another one by Morris. Can Genkit be used to come up with UI UX?
Probably not Genkit itself, but you can use Genkit to build something, to build a UX, but you need to tie in something like Gemini and Imagen in order to generate the UX elements. It all depends with your prompt, whereby prompt engineering is important here, whereby you need to make sure that you tell Gemini to behave like a UX UI designer, and you want to generate mocks and then pass whatever you get from what is it called, from Gemini to Imagen in what we call multimodal input, so that you're able to interact with different models instead of just one.
Can see Osoro wants to challenge Lovable. All right, Valerie, we have, is it possible to switch or upgrade models later in my application?
Yes, you can switch models from, you can actually switch from Gemini to GPT models, or to Anthropic, or to whatever, with a single line of code at any point in time of your application. No, as long as you have access to that model, whether it's free through the free tier or through the through a paid plan, no, switching should be very trivial.
Yeah.
And the beauty about Genkit is that your drawing code won't change. You only switch out the plugin you're using and tell it, now use this model instead of that model.
Yeah, and to add on to what Maina has said, remember we have flows, and the flows are composable, and you could be like, for the example that we looked at for doing a social media post, you could have one LLM which is very good at doing text generation. You have another LLM which is very good on generating images based on a certain context. So you could combine multiple models to achieve a certain task at the end of the day. There's another question here by Peter. Explain more on use of RAG on Genkit, including possible RAG-related knowledge base.
Yes, can we cover this next week so that we can go into details, because we have like a nicely prepared session for this with examples and code labs. But in brief, to give you a brief, is that LLMs don't know your private data. So let's say you are a hotel and you have a custom menu. The LLM doesn't know that. So in order for an LLM to recommend dishes or to help the user for or with their custom data, you need to be able to pass to be able to give it that data to them. And this is where lag comes in, whereby instead of building a custom model, which is not easy for a lot of people, which is requires skill set and highly trained AI or AI researchers, you can do lag, whereby now you tell the AI, so this is what I have in my, let's say, restaurant. This is the menu item. This is the food I am offering. So whatever you're going to recommend based on this, not your general knowledge which you are trained on.
And to add on to what Mainaha said, there is a demo that was done by Wayne Gakuo, one of us, and it's a quick demo that shows you an e-commerce application whereby you are able to order items from the catalog, and that it's also using Genkit Gemini, and it's restricted to the catalog that is provided in the application. You can't ask it about chapatis. I think somebody tried to ask it about chapatis, and it said it doesn't know. So you are able to restrict it to a specific context and ground it so that it answers your data answers questions based on a specific data set. Patricia Mwangi, do you have a program where you teach one to build their own LLM? Right now, certainly not, but I believe there are resources out there that can teach you how to do this, and you can give it a shot. You should be able to build your own, train it, and do so many other things. Maina, do you have something to add to that? There is also Jean who is asking about do the models have rate limits?
Yeah. So, okay, let me put it this way. It depends with who owns the model. Some models have very generous rate limits. Like until recently, Gemini used to have some of the most generous rate limits for their models, but the pricing is changing because LLMs are expensive to run and they have to turn a profit at some point. But generally, they have rate limits unless you're running your own model on your own infrastructure.
Yeah. Muturi or Chiang, if the LLM or SLM we use like Gemma has limitations, how would that affect our app, and what's the best way to work around it?
So limitations, honestly, there are some things they can't do, or it's too expensive to do for LLMs. So it's all about ensuring you can try and make sure the prompt is as accurate as possible, so that doesn't get lost in trying to figure out what's doing, especially like these new ones which are thinking models per se, or reasoning models. But generally, if you hit the limits of an LLM, which is possible but can be quite hard, you're probably going to now get what we call degraded performance, whereby you ask it to do something and then it does not do exactly what you want. And there are things you can do around this, but generally, if you are doing something like cloud, you can do something like vector search to make sure you reduce the context it has to deal with, because sometimes if you said it too much information, it's unable to process that information. But if you have done all that and you are still hitting the limitations, then there's a much you can do at this point in time, unless you decide to go down the route of training your own custom models that's very specific and make you give it as much resources as possible.
Yeah, and the rate limits are real, because, like, for example, the other day I was playing around with Veo, and Veo can only generate a video for like 8 seconds. So I have seen some guys who try to work around that by taking the last frame in the video and using it as an input to the next 8 seconds, and they have their prompt so that they're able to create a continuous video, which could be something like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. But at the max, every output will be about 8 seconds. So you can figure out some ingenious ways of overcoming these limits on your own. There is also another question here. Wayne has shared their resource where you can check the limits for different Gemini, for the Gemini API rather. And then there is a field here asking if I already have a backend, for example, Fast API, how can I connect it with Genkit so that it uses my DBs and APIs?
Yeah, I'm going to defer this to next week because that's when we'll be covering two ways which you can do this. One is function calling or tool calling in Genkit, and number two is RAG. Both of them have different use cases. With RAG, it's all about generation based on like information that is from your database, while tool calling is about giving an LLM access to your own internal system so that it's able to achieve things. So for instance, it's able to go into the database, figure out the username, maybe retrieve the orders, and then compose a prompt based on that, or maybe even open a ticket on behalf of the user. So we are going to cover most of those next week.
There's also a question here by Wambua Benego. Say that I want to take Llama, train it, host it. Is this better than using API or extension of the models? What is comparable pricing? Is there a better advantage of hosting this yourself? I think this is a question again that you can defer, and it's also a question of you'd also need to do some research as well on your end to determine what would work best for you. There is also another question here by Peter. Explain when to use Node.js and why configure TypeScript.
Yeah, so TypeScript is compiled to JavaScript. JavaScript requires a runtime, which is Node.js on the server, and then on the browser we have browsers. So the reason we are configuring TypeScript is because the SDK is TypeScript fast rather than JavaScript fast. So you need to be able to you need your editor, you need your compiler to understand your application in terms of like types and so on. And then the Node.js is where you run the backend or the Genkit on top of. So it's similar to JVM in Java. And the configuration that come around the TypeScript configuration language. But if you're using Go, you don't need to do any of those.
All right. Any more questions? Ask, please. If we can answer today, all right. If deferred to next time, that's okay as well. We have another one by Maurice Osoro here. Can you embed malicious instructions in the prompts or manipulate data that the model relies on, like make AI sound like it's hallucinating but doing something else?
Yes. It's a whole new nightmare out there where people are doing this and trying to break your application in ways that you have no idea they could be. So, like, I've even seen people do this with trying to escape the what we call when it comes to prompts. We have like system prompts, which are basically like what if it's Gemini, what Google wants to safeguards Google wants to put into the model, which is why when you ask some question, it's going to refuse to do that because there is a prompt. And then we have like a user prompt, which is what you enter. And your user prompt cannot exceed, should not take precedence over the system prompt. But people have been doing engineering in ways that are trying to break out of that in order to get the models to do way stupid things or way malicious things.
Yeah, because I've had also people trying as well they can hack into your AI and try to force it to tell them the tools or other intricate details behind the scenes that they do not have access to directly. So yes, it can happen.
Yeah, also to add to that point, remember hacking an AI application, especially when you take a prompt from the user and pass it directly to the AI model without doing pre-processing, is different, or it's like completely different from like hacking an application because you don't even have to like You just need for me to make sure like the AI thinks it's a genuine instruction instead, and then does something based on that instruction. So for instance, you can tell it if it's accessing the user's table, you can basically be able to, and it's a free hard prompt, you can be able to basically do something like, okay, then return the password for the user or something like that. And if you haven't added safeguards, it's going to do that.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, remember, even as you're dealing with these applications that are being built, are utilizing LLMs, SLMs, or whatever feature that you're using of AI, the security, foundational security requirements do not go out. It doesn't mean because it's AI, it's smart enough to detect when somebody is trying to do probably some SQL injection. So those foundational concepts of how you layer your security when you're dealing with info coming from the outside, how you screen it so that you can allow it to come into your applications, those fundamental concepts still apply. Security, even as you're doing your applications here, security does not have to be an afterthought. Think about security from the word go. That is why you saw in the flows, we are also able to add things like authentication and authorization. So security still matters in these applications as well. We also have another question here. I saw a demo on exploiting Casa or Electron apps, then controlling whatever someone does with Casa. I think that one is a comment as well as to the other question that had been asked about taking control of an application that is using AI. So things can happen, and always, I think as I was learning programming, one of the things my tutor used to say, do not trust anything from the outside, even if it's an input that is coming from your colleague who is using your internal business application. You cannot trust it. So it will go through the same checks and balances like if it was coming from an unknown third party. So treat everything as suspicious. Check it, and check it again if you need to. All right. Any other question? Comment before we call it a day. All right, if there are no more questions, maybe you can take this as the last question. If somebody does not put another one before we close. Is there a code for switching between models when it hits rate limits? Now, and Mina, you can add on to this as well as when you haven't spoken, please. I know you're in the house, so if you can hear us or you're able to speak, please go ahead. You should be able to switch your models on the fly as well. Remember, on the code that we saw, you're able to import your plugins and add in your models in your code. So based on what works or based on certain criteria, you can decide at this point I want to use this model, at this point I want to use this model. So you have that flexibility to be able to switch. How can you bypass token limits? Before we go to that, yes, Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is a good question. So yeah, you can definitely switch between different Gemini models. So for example, if you have it initialized in your code, you can either change it 2.5 flash, 2.5 pro, 2.5 flash light. But I'll always request that you just check the link that I shared on the rate limits to just see which one will work best for you. I wouldn't say that they're all the same. Of course, when it comes to Gemini Pro, 2.5 Pro, it might have superior capabilities than 2.5 Flash. but I've found like 2.5 flash to be also pretty decent for some of the activities that you might want to do, and it has a higher rate limit especially when it comes to requests per day. So I think for 0.5 flash has a rate limit of 250 requests per day, but then 2.5 Pro has only 100. So if you're working on a project that maybe requires Gemini, you can make use of 2.5 flash, or you can start 2.5 Pro, and then later on, if you hit the limit per day, maybe because of high usage, you can only switch 2.5 Pro or 2.5 flash or 2.5 flash Lite. Yeah, and of course, if you're feeling generous, you can always pay for more, which has of course more requests per day. So just check on the link that I shared, and it should give you a really good view of how that looks like.
All right, thank you. I think that also answers the follow-up question by Phil about switching, how you can do that automatically. For Brian Kitoni, I think that question is one of those questions. One says, if you try to do it you're on your own, that is why limits exist for a certain reason. And if you go into the other side of the fence, whatever you find there is you're on your own. So we wouldn't encourage you to do that. Remember everything that you get on the net, or it's a resource that is provided, it's a co-shared resource. And if somebody hogs the resource, it means you are denying other people access to the same resource. So whatever resource we use, whether it's an API that you're trying to get data from, any other kind of resource that is available, always use it, and according to the conduct and the guardrails that we are supposed to, because those guardrails exist for one reason or another. And let's promote good usage as well. For Jean, say I have built my app with Genkit and uses a certain model. Is there a way to be able to feed the LLM with description using PDF videos about my app so that I can increase its awareness? This is where we spoke about RAG, and in the next session next week, we are going to see code labs that are helping us to use RAG as well as multimodal. You can be able to pass different types of inputs to your LLM to increase or to ground it to a very specific context, so that it is very knowledgeable about that area and answer questions. So we will see how you can be able to do that, Jean. Again, when I shared the link there, and there is also Maina shared and the router, he mentioned about the router, he has shared a link there as well. And Jean, again, you're asking, can I use one API key for multiple similar projects, or do I have to create a different key for each of them? Maybe when you can answer this about projects by Jean.
So when it comes to projects, it's usually recommended to use one API key per project, but you can generate as many as one. So there isn't any limit to how many API keys you can generate. But yes, you can generate as many as one. So remember that, with API keys, let's say, for example, in this case, you have also Google Cloud Credits. Google Cloud Credits are tied to your API key. So if you have one API key that has Google Cloud Credits, maybe that's the one you'd want to use for your numerous projects. But if you have Google Cloud Credits for all the API keys, or for most of the API keys you have, that's also well and good. But yes, you can still use API key for multiple projects. And also, you can do one API key per project, depending on what you do.
All right. Thank you, Wayne. So maybe I'll ask now for the last question. Last question. Well, if there is no any other question, thank you so much for giving us your time and sitting with us in this session to learn about Genkit. I'm looking forward to seeing more of you going ahead and exploring Genkit. I think from the demos that we have seen and from the code fragments that we have seen, it is very easy to pick up Genkit and start doing stuff with it. So please be curious, do stuff. We shall be sharing resources. We shall be sharing demos to some of these demos. Please go inside, look at them, take them apart, learn how they work, so that you can be able to understand how you can bring in your own applications to be powered using AI. Thank you so much. Clap for yourself for being here for this long. And as we close, Chelsea, we do not have a WhatsApp group for many other reasons. One being that it is hard to keep one. There will be a lot of noise if we have only one WhatsApp channel, and if guys come back, join as the conversation is ongoing, they have no context of what happened previously. So that is why we are sticking with Discord. If you don't mind, you can share the Discord link here so that anyone who is not on Discord yet can join the server and get to share with us, or rather learn together with us. So there is the Discord link. If you haven't, please, that's the invite link. Join the call. All right. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Maina. Thank you, Wayne. And thank you to all of us. Tomorrow we shall be having the next session again for the guys who've selected that they want to have their session on Wednesday. And I believe that session tomorrow will be hosted by Wayne. I look forward to seeing many others join. And those who are here today, please remember to share this the joining link with anyone who would benefit from this. So don't learn alone. Learn with others as well, so that we empower ourselves and democratize, as they say, democratize information. Thank you so much. Thank you.